Coming up, a topic I was shocked to learn is still an issue in today's time. We are talking hunger. The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by Children's Learning Place, excellence in early childhood education since 1998, educating Chicago's children for 20 years. And the Auto Barn Mazda of Evanston and Chicago, the Auto Barn Mazda, where driving matters. Special thanks to the Illinois chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Dr. Daftari and the team at Art of Modern Dentistry, Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty, STI Movers, Mazda, Chicago Andrea Creative, and Cellular Intelligence. Hunger, an issue that people have been dealing with since the beginning of time, yet has us scratching our heads on why this problem has not been solved. Today's eye-opening show reveals that hunger is not just a problem overseas, but also here at home. You're watching The Whitney Reynolds Show. UNICEF is a name we all know when it comes to helping children across the world. This humanitarian organization is on a mission to save lives, and part of their work involves hunger. They are here to explain how malnourishment is a scary road that can lead to deadly consequences. Welcome to the show, Kanar and Beth. Now, Kanar, how old are you?
I'm 15 years old.
You are 15, and how long have you been involved with UNICEF?
I've been working with UNICEF for about 10 years now.
Beth, is that normal to see kids that young involved with solving some of the world's biggest issues?
Yeah, absolutely. So UNICEF is the organization that's about kids helping kids. And Kanar and his family and his friends have been a key part of that for us here, which is awesome to see. But starting with 67 years ago, Trick or Treat for UNICEF, to today, some of the programs that we're doing with young people.
Wow.
We're so thrilled to have Kanar.
Well, I am excited you are here too, because we actually have y'all on for malnourishment, and that's a real issue that we see that's linked to hunger. You know, sometimes people look at hunger as just a big issue, but you take it a layer back and say, okay, how do we actually feed these people properly? Beth, what are some of the stats with malnourishment?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting to note that actually almost 50% of the reasons that kids die around the world are all linked back to hunger and malnourishment in some capacity. UNICEF knows that a child who has measles might be more susceptible to being malnourished, or a child who's malnourished might be more susceptible to measles or other preventable causes of child death globally. So it's an interesting issue because it's also so connected to a number of other issues that impact children and their healthy growth and development.
And malnourishment, in case people are like, okay, I'm picturing something in my head, but I'm not really sure that's what they're talking about. Can you explain just malnourishment as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. So malnourishment, like you said, it's more than just hunger. It's about a child being truly in a state or a condition where their body is not functioning and growing properly. Kids who are malnourished might receive permanent impact. Their brains might just never grow and develop as they should over their lifetime. So that means diminished learning capacity.
Does it go back to the food that they're putting in their mouths?
Yes, absolutely, it does. But they're all very interconnected issues. So it's complicated, but it's also very solvable. It's very solvable, and we know that truly some of the nourishment status for kids of their whole lifetime is set within those first 1,000 days. So it goes back even further to making sure that mom has a healthy pregnancy, and that within those first 1,000 days of life, kids are receiving the proper nourishment as well. It sets them on the right track going forward.
That is amazing. And you are actually helping solve some of these issues. Tell us what you've been doing with UNICEF and malnourishment.
So one project that I've been working on is the UNICEF Kid Power Bands, and I'm wearing one right now. But basically what these bands are is they're Fitbits, essentially, for children, where they track steps, and those steps correspond to different points, which unlock packets that give food to malnourished children in countries all over the world. So they're saving lives and getting kids fit.
So not only are you staying fit here at home, but then you're helping kids overseas. What are those packets like, Beth?
Yeah, so the packets are, it's about the size of a Cliff Bar. And it's
Okay.
small, and it's just a single packet that is jam-packed with nutrients. Tons of protein, tons of vitamins, all of the healthy things that kids need to be on the move. And those therapeutic food packets are given to kids when they are most severely malnourished. Their bodies are in a position where they wouldn't be able to have regular food even if they wanted to. So it's really more of a therapeutic intervention. And UNICEF and our partners can give these therapeutic food packets to kids who are severely malnourished. And we know that like roughly 150 of these packets is a course of treatment for a child. And it quite literally can bring a child back from the brink of starvation.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing. And you've actually been able to deliver some of these packets with some of your work. Tell us about some of the mission work you've done.
I have. So recently this summer I was in Italy addressing some of the refugee crisis components there. And the group I was with, we visited several refugee camps there. And the migrants were receiving, after their long boat trip, some of them were malnourished, and they were receiving some of these packets, as well as educational components and legal help from UNICEF.
What was it like for you as a kid being raised in the United States, probably haven't been hungry a day in your life? What was it like for you to see that?
It was really a culture shock. We hear about these issues a lot in the news, but to actually see them, to witness them, and to compare that to your own life means a lot.
Did you know that you have to make a difference with what you saw? You saw the need.
Of course, I've been involved with UNICEF for a long time, but after actually going there and witnessing the problems firsthand, it really changed my perspective on these issues, and it made me double down on my involvement with UNICEF.
So these food packets are really changing people's lives.
Oh, 100%. And I remember very vividly, and I probably will forever, when I first walked back in from my first maternity leave after my son Will was born, which was almost 5 years ago. We were in the midst of responding for the Sahel nutrition crisis. Hundreds of thousands of kids were severely malnourished in parts of Western Africa. And I remember hearing this story about Hassam. Hassam was almost 2 years old and weighed 12 pounds. Oh. The day before, I was at the pediatrician with my son, who at the time was 4 months old and weighed 16 pounds.
Wow.
And so for me to really put into context that this almost 2-year-old weighed less than my 4-month-old, that put malnutrition into context for me and really drove home why it's so important for all of us to do what we can to help respond for kids like that. So Hassan's mom took him from their village and their community by donkey into the closest UNICEF-supported hospital in Chad, and he was prescribed these therapeutic food packets. And literally within a couple weeks, he was gaining weight. It is truly a miracle, and we've seen it time and time again all over the world. And so UNICEF is the leading procurer of these food packets globally, but has also helped set up the supply chain for that. We recognize the demand is tremendous, and we need to make sure there's a proven solution. We know how to fix this for kids, but for getting these into their hands, into their mom's hands. And so it's been interesting to see not just what we all can do here to mobilize these resources, but also what can we affect on a global supply chain perspective to make sure that kids are getting what they need.
One thing I keep hearing is solutions,
right.
And that is good. Thank you so much for coming on, you two.
Thank you so much for having us.
Our next guest is Jason Day, one of the world's best golfers. This pro athlete has taken today's topic to the next level and started a nonprofit here at home so no kid goes hungry.
Jason, hunger in Ohio, most of the time when we hear about hungry children, we think immediately overseas. How did you discover there was a problem here in the States?
Well, my wife is a big advocate of giving back to her, local area, which is in the Lucas Mansfield area with the Blessings in a Backpack. But you know what? It was something that we looked at starting back in 2011, the Brighter Days Foundation. It was kind of unique for us. Once again, we're able to be put into the spotlight and be able to give back to a lot of people that are in need. The first annual charity event, we benefited 5 different charities, and we didn't really want to get tied down to one at that time. But now we came across this one charity or one center, the Stowe Mission Center, in Columbus, Ohio, and we just felt it was right to be able to give back to the inner city there, really understand what people are going through and the hard times they're going through. So being able to impact those people, even though we want to raise awareness for it,
Right.
but I kind of want to stay out of the spotlight. We just want to make sure that they're getting what they need, and
That's good.
it's a unique situation for me and my wife Ellie, because this is really special to her, and I'm and I'm so busy playing golf, I'm able to, sometimes, come to places like this in St. Charles and be able to take some time away from the golf course, get back on the golf course, and really benefit a lot of people.
So one thing I read is that part of the mission is that kids go back to school on Monday, like full belly, ready.
yeah.
And you never really think about that. Again,
Yeah, so-
it's one of those concepts,
Yeah, so a lot of kids, they usually when they go to school they get to eat at school, but during after school they sometimes they don't have dinner, and then even on the weekends they don't have enough food to feed themselves. And as a father of two, and you a mother of two, I mean you can really understand that just how much that really gets down to your soul to really try and give back to these kids that really are that are hungry and really want to to eat and stuff like that. So it's really good to be able to give back, and we just want to try and impact as many lives as we can.
It's now time for our viewer's voice, and this week's question is, how would you solve the issue of hunger?
I think world hunger is an economic problem, plain and simple. So it's a problem of capitalism. So one thing that we can do is get involved in local government and do simple things like volunteering at food pantries and everything to make sure that your immediate environment is thought about.
In my opinion, the issue of hunger begins with education in communities where this is an issue and where it is not. There's a lot more that people can do besides having food drives twice a year during the holidays. Another aspect of this issue is GMO use in the food industry. I believe that we need to focus on developing sustainably so that we can have greater food security in the future.
Get social with us. Make your voice heard. Submit your video on WhitneyReynolds.com. Our next guest experienced hunger as a child and has made it her goal to help with this issue and also share her experience with people in similar situations so they don't feel like a number. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Whitney. I'm glad to be here.
You experienced hunger firsthand as a child. What was that like for you?
Well, yes, quite often, actually. I grew up to a single mom on the west side of Chicago. It was just two of us, my sister and I. And so quite often there were times when we just didn't know what we were going to eat next or where the next meal was coming from. My mom was working, and so it was pretty hard for her. Being the oldest of two, she quite often took me to places that, pantries and such like that, where we could obtain food just to make ends meet. And so I just remember going to some of those food pantries and just experiencing some of the most awful things. The conditions of the food pantries were just not acceptable, and we were almost just shoved food into our arms, no choices, just what we have. And oftentimes we got home with the food and either half of it was spoiled or outdated. It was just really, really hard.
And to see that as a child too, where most kids are worried about, like homework, you had a whole nother thing on your plate.
Sure.
You were worried about where your next meal was coming from. What was that like as a kid? Like, did it take up mental space? Did it make you more nervous as a student?
So I think ultimately what it did was give me a hunger and desire to just want to do better for folks who were experiencing the same thing that I was. My mom was great about keeping us together. And so specifically for myself, it didn't put a damper on my spirits, but motivated me to want to do something for other folks.
That is absolutely amazing. And going back to these food pantry conditions, was that a normal thing back in the day that some of these food pantries would just hand you whatever?
Well, from what I could tell and what I remember, what I recollect is that we visited several on occasions, and they all were the same. You just got your hand out and you were sent on your way.
So often people think that this hunger issue is overseas or in other countries, but to know it's happening here at home really makes you step back and think. With the food pantries, did it supply enough for y'all?
So the food pantry for us was specifically trying to help us get to the next payday or next meal or whatever. So it was kind of that buffer, but it was definitely not enough because, as I mentioned, most of the food was not edible. And so we did the best with what we had.
Was this common in your neighborhood at the time?
I would say yes.
So
absolutely.
other friends were going through the
Sure.
same thing.
The same things.
When you went to school during the day, was that almost a relief because meals were covered?
So specifically, I think that hot lunches in schools at the time weren't the best either. So you were at a catch-22, but we did indulge in lunches and breakfasts at school and what my mom could provide at home. So not the biggest of reliefs, but another option.
Right.
Yeah.
And you said that this fueled this mission that you were going to go on as an adult.
Yes.
Tell us about how you took that pain and really turned it into power in helping others.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So actually, even as a young adult, still experiencing some food insecurity and not knowing, hey, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to do it? Visiting food pantries as a young adult. Sort of the same thing was still taking place maybe even 15 years later. So within that, you know, I sort of vowed like, okay, Lord, is this the will for my life that I make a difference in this capacity? So I decided that if I ever got into a better predicament, that I would definitely be the change in this area.
That's good.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, and so that's what you did. Tell us about where you are now.
Okay, so first and foremost, we started a small food pantry in my home, my husband and I, and we did that by just using a small amount of our own grocery budget, and then we would just buy the food that we ate. And it was word of mouth, and then we would help folks that were in need, that were just like us, so they ate the nutritious stuff that we ate, the good stuff that we ate, and so we kind of started there. And then fast forward after having kids and being married for some time to the present day, Breakthrough Urban Ministries Fresh Market. And so it has been so rewarding because I am the Fresh Market Coordinator at Breakthrough Urban Ministries, and it is actually a food pantry, but we call it a fresh market.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's really fancy.
Well, and it's nice because you have that experience of feeling like it is what people didn't want or it was spoiled, and you're making sure people don't feel like they're either a number or that they are getting leftovers.
Yes.
And I love the name, the Fresh Market, because that does sound really fancy.
It is.
Sounds like somewhere I want to shop.
You should come by sometime.
I love it.
And actually, it is a choice pantry in the East Garfield Park community.
And tell me, Garfield Park, in case people are watching outside of Chicago, is it a community that needs a little bit of extra help?
So yes, of course. East Garfield Park is one of the more impoverished communities. And so, yes, it borders the west side of Chicago, not quite downtown, but it is a community that is in need of assistance, of course.
And it's right there. And you're serving the people right in that neighborhood.
Yes.
How does that make you feel to know that not only did you say, if my situation changed, I'd want to do this, but you're actually doing it?
Well, it's really exciting. I can tell you that. And it's very rewarding to know that you could have been in a place yourself and then God would place you in an area to bring some relief to others who have felt the same things as you. And so it's been awesome.
Have you had a chance to get one-on-one with kids in the Fresh Market and lean down and tell them, I was once you and I've made a change so that you could be here? Like, have you done that?
Yeah, absolutely. Not just kids, but adults as well, young adults as well. So we're very, very community minded, very relational.
And just think about that chain effect. That kid then will be a future you. And I think that is amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Our Loa Sutter is putting her money where her mouth is, literally. She is a true champion for this cause. Let's welcome her out. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Whitney. It's great to be here.
So we just heard from Wendy, and she's with Breakthrough as well. But you started Breakthrough Urban Ministries. How did this thought come to you?
We were in a church that kept having street people come in wanting help, and so we opened up a storefront room, and I put on a pot of coffee and just got to know street people as they came in off the street.
And when they came in off the street, they were hungry, they were needing help. Were you not scared to help them?
No. I have never had an incident with a homeless person that has been anything but kind and loving and caring. So no, not at all. We got to know people and heard their stories, and they broke our hearts. They had some situations that had happened to them that were just so difficult, such a struggle.
And the stories that you're saying, it makes a lot of sense, because unless you really take the time to get to know someone, you have no idea the path they have gone down that led them to where they are. And so often we think hunger, that can't be really happening, but you found that it was happening everywhere around you.
Yeah, people came in because they wanted the hot lunch that we had, and I would make soup and sandwiches for lunch, and we had coffee always, and then I think they came in for the food, and then they stayed for the community, for the warmth, the friendship, the fellowship that they had with one another.
So almost a deeper hunger
There's
as well.
a deeper hunger. I mean, they're both very real. And we need to have that companionship and that camaraderie of people who care about us and, are there for us. We also need to eat.
So often, if you live day to day and you don't have that as an issue, you sometimes don't see it. You might see the homeless person and think, well, I hope he's fed tonight, but who's really doing it if we aren't?
Yeah.
And what you found out is that these homeless people really needed a meal.
It's hard to imagine that there are people who are seriously do not know where their next meal is going to come from. We eventually grew to provide services for homeless adults and programs for youth in the community. But what we found is that people still, even though they are part of our programs and they know they're going to have 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they'll stash food in little hidden places just in case they're hungry and they don't have anything to eat.
Oh my goodness. And you, like you were saying, you provide 3 meals a day. Tell us about your program.
Right. So we have 2 centers, one for men, one for women, where we provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner now every day, and then housing for homeless adults, 30 men, 30 women, and we have about 95, soon to be 95 units of supportive housing where people have their own apartments, and we're providing the resources for them.
Is your goal to get these people back on their feet?
Absolutely. And to get them to become contributing members of the community. And so we find that over and over, that people who've come through our programs, our homeless services programs, once they get stable, they want to give back. They want to participate in, being the resource that they have taken advantage of themselves.
What do you do about kids that are in the program that are hungry? Because, we're thinking about the parents, but parents sometimes have kids. What do you do about feeding the kids?
Well, we have meals for the kids in our after-school program, and of course subsidizing groceries for the families in the neighborhood, so that no kid has to go hungry. But there are many more that we don't have the capacity to provide for, and the need is great. Everybody does better when they're well fed.
Right.
We all do better.
I mean, think about it. Just like if I miss breakfast, I'm talking one meal.
Yes.
I'm not a pleasant person.
Right.
And I need that, but I can't imagine missing multiple meals and not knowing where the next one. And that makes sense what you were saying, how they might stash it away, because they would be scared. They've been hungry, and hungry's not a good place to be.
You don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
And what we eat really matters, of course. So if you're only eating, pop and chips from the corner, it begins to affect learning and relationships and just a sense of well-being.
Well, what an amazing legacy you are leaving here. In case people want to get involved, where should they go?
Oh, they can just visit breakthrough.org/hunger and learn more about what we're doing and get involved.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
When we were doing research on the show about hunger, we came across several everyday folks working to end this issue. From a retired police officer turned chef who's feeding the hungry, to people who are running races across the country to fund food pantries. Remember, this is not just an issue far out there. Hunger is happening in every neighborhood and needs our attention. For more information on today's show, visit whitneyreynolds.com.
Go beyond the interview with our 52-week guide of inspiration. The book goes deeper with the stories you see right here on The Whitney Reynolds Show. To order your copy for $12.95 plus shipping and handling, go to whitneyreynolds.com/store. The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by Children's Learning Place, excellence in early childhood education since 1998, educating Chicago's children for 20 years. And the Auto Barn Mazda of Evanston and Chicago, the Auto Barn Mazda, where driving matters. Special thanks to the Illinois chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Dr. Daftari and the team at Arta Modern Dentistry, Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty, STI Movers, Mazda, Chicago Andrea Creative, and Cellular Intelligence.